Today, I will speak about the involvement, the meaningful involvement of civil society in drug policies in the European Union. This webinar is part of a series of webinars which was launched by Correlation European Harm Reduction Network. Title is Strengthening Harm Reduction Advocacy Across Europe. Probably some of you have already participated in the previous two webinars. First was about advocacy in general, and the second was about video advocacy. And if you are interested, please come to the fourth webinar, which will be on the 18th of June on disinformation and moral panics. I think this topic has not been discussed very widely yet in our circles, so I think many of you have something to say about it, and I also have something to say about this issue. So today we will speak about the meaningful involvement of civil society, and I will discuss a few reports and studies we've done with the Civil Society Forum on Drugs, which is an advisory or expert group of the European Commission. So we give advice to the European Commission on drug policy issues. This organization, for those of you who are not familiar with the CSFD, it has 45 members for 3 years mandate. Its next mandate will just start this year. And it's a very diverse group, ideologically, geographically, and in all sense, like it's a multidisciplinary group. And we have working groups in the CSFD, and one working group was chaired by me on civil society involvement. What we did is we also conducted some studies on this issue, and I will talk about that a bit later. If you are more interested in the CSFD in general, I recommend you this movie, the filmed with my colleague, The Right to Sit at the Table. You can find it on YouTube. So that is a kind of short summary video about the work of the CSFD. So first of all, with the CSFD working group, we conducted a literature review in 2020, and we wanted to review all the literature on how can we define civil society, and how can we define the meaningful involvement of civil society in the field of drug policy, and what kind of research has been done before, and what reports were published on this issue. So this report is actually, I will not talk more in detail, but just a few highlights from this report, and you can find this report on the CSFD website. So it's about the competing definition of civil society. What is the benefit for governments to work with civil society? Because of course it's not only beneficial for civil society, but it has a lot of benefits for the governments to work with us. What are the forms and mechanisms to involve civil society? What principles and recommendations organizations made on civil society involvement? What are the barriers? And some positive examples is also highlighted in this report, and the risks and opportunities of funding. So right in our days, the concept of civil society and its relationship to other sectors, such as the governmental sector and the market sector, is changing. So according to the old paradigm, there were like the three sectors: the governmental or decision-making, the market sector, and then the non-governmental and the non-profit sector. And these sectors worked independently and more or less in some kind of isolation from each other. But these days, actually, these very strict boundaries or lines between civil society and, for example, the market is a bit blurring, and also between the government and civil society, also in a positive sense, that now the optimal working of a government is that it is involving civil society into preparing decisions. Also, in a negative way, that sometimes governments tries to kind of control civil society by creating their own organizations. This phenomenon is called the gongos. You know, the government established the civil society organizations, which receive all their money from the government, and they are actually just promoting the messages of the government. So the picture is much more complicated than even like 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And according to the Pompidou Group's classification, which we also used at the Civil Society Forum on Drugs, there are 4 levels of involvement, involving civil society into decision making, and these 4 levels are: first is the information. So that's the simplest way, you know, how the government can consult civil society. It's a one-way information flow, actually. That, you know, the government informs civil society about what's happening. That's not pretty much. And then the second level is consultation, which is a kind of ad hoc initiative. The government asks the civil society about a specific topic or document. And then the third level is a dialogue, a two-way communication, when there are some shared objectives already. So that in some way, in some levels of this dialogue, for example, in the case of collaborative dialogue, there is a joint paper or joint document which is adopted by both civil society and government in the end of this process. And the fourth, the highest level of cooperation between civil society and government, is the partnership, when there are shared responsibilities in each step of the decision-making process. So, for example, partnership is when a government is creating a new national drug strategy, and it involves civil society in each and every steps of this, like preparing, assessing the situation, then designing the whole document, implementing the national drug strategy, and monitoring and evaluating the national drug strategy. So that is we can call partnership, and that's the strongest form. And what we did with the Civil Society Forum, we realized after making some quantitative research, like surveys among our membership, is that although we have lots of recommendations and guidelines on how to design services, like, for example, harm reduction services or prevention services, which can ensure the quality of services, this is missing if we speak about civil society involvement. So everybody is speaking about meaningful civil society involvement. What do we mean about meaningful? What is meaningful? So we wanted to answer this question by creating our own guidelines based on previous recommendations. We called it the quality standards for civil society involvement in drug policy. Again, this document is available on the website of CSFD and also on Drug Reporter, our own website. And this is a practical guide for both decision makers and civil society organizations. Quality standard means a generally accepted principle or set of rules for the best and most appropriate implementation of interventions. So, for example, with drug prevention interventions, there is the European Drug Prevention Quality Standards. Maybe some of you heard about it before. So these quality standards look like this. This is the scheme of the European Drug Prevention Quality Standards. So that there are this cycle of how you are making interventions. Actually, this is also applicable to harm reduction most of the time. So needs assessment, resource assessment, program formulation, management and mobilization of resources, delivery and monitoring, evaluations, and dissemination. So, and then there are some cross-cutting or overarching principles also applicable to all of these steps, like sustainability, communication, staff development, ethical drug prevention. We thought with CSFD that we can use this structure and create quality standards for civil society involvement as well. So we can use the same structure to do it in the case of the civil society involvement. Why do we need these quality standards? It's good for decision makers because it's a necessary. It shows them the necessary steps when they are involving civil society. So the planning, implementing, and evaluating the whole process. How to identify the actors of civil society, how to create selection criteria, mechanisms to involve civil society, monitor, evaluate the whole process, and ensure that the cost effectiveness of investments. And it's good for civil society as well, because it enables us to make our voices heard and to be able to represent the communities, also to ensure transparency and accountability with civil society involvement, and provides reference points when we are not consulted in an appropriate way. So we can point to this document that, oh, this is how it should be done. So whenever if you are civil society and you are not consulted in your own country by drug policy, you can use this document as a reference point that this is how it should be done. And it's also to evaluate the government's performance in this area. And it's also a good question, like how can we define what does it mean to speak about quality in civil society involvement? So if we can call a civil society involvement high quality, this means that it is mutually relevant and meaningful to both the decision makers and civil society, that it is balanced so that all kinds of voices are represented, and it's based on competence of the participants. It is used in preparing evaluation decisions, so it's not only playing lip service, but it's really are used. And there is some adequate funding provided for the participants, and it is sustainable, and there is a formality in it. So in reality, if you work in civil society in the drug policy field, you know that this is not the case. I don't think that it is the case in any of our countries. So in reality, what we see is the civil society involvement is often a kind of box ticking exercise. Okay, yeah, we invited civil society, they were talking about their opinion. We can tap our shoulders. We are very good guys that we talk to civil society, but we don't listen really what they say. In reality, there is usually no funding for advocacy. There is kind of cherry picking of those organizations or voices that are favorable to the government, but sometimes other voices are left out. And sometimes it's only used to rubber stamp the decision. So we can say that we are government, we can tell you that, yes, we did this document with very broad participation or consultation. And most of the time, these processes are very ad hoc and informal. So there is no continuity and sustainability of these mechanisms. So we wanted to change this issue, and we wanted to create a tool which can be used as a tool for civil society in their advocacy to create more meaningful mechanisms in the country level and also in the city level, in the local level, because it's also important. So we came up with this cycle and this scheme of how civil society should be involved. And as you see, it's quite similar to the European drug prevention quality standards. So we used it as a model, also because we know that the European institutions are usually quite obsessed with this quality standards document. So then maybe one day, European institutions can adopt similar quality standards as official document, and then it will be even better. So we have six in the cycle. We have 6 steps. First step is the government should select those organizations or community activists who it wants to work with or consult. So it needs to have a mapping of the civil society and select the most relevant voices. Then the second step is to formulate the mandate for all those organizations who are consulted. Then the third step is the setting of the agenda of the mechanism. So what will be the subjects on the agenda? Then the fourth step is drafting, preparing decisions. Fifth is implementing decisions, and the sixth is monitoring and evaluation. So each and every step, civil society should be involved, and we came up also with 9 overarching quality criteria. So we said that at each of these steps, we can measure how meaningful civil society's involvement is if these 9 criteria can be applied to these steps. So it should be transparent, should be balanced. The involvement should be balanced, means that there should be a balanced, that should be a diversity of voices, communities represented there in terms of gender and all kinds of this. And then timely means that the civil society should have sufficient time to prepare its comments and interventions. Because if you have like 2 days to comment a document, that's not a timely involvement. Then the fourth one is approachable. This means that the government officials, but also civil society, should respond to emails and calls. So they should be approachable if they are needed in this process. And then the next one is competence. That means that each participant should have competence in drug policy, and the government can say that I will not consult with this because this organization because they don't have a competence in drug policy at all. Then the next one is open or trustful. So that means that without some kind of mutual trust, this whole exercise will not be meaningful. So even if there is a formal mechanism, if there is distrust, huge distrust between the participants, I think the whole process will fail. So we need to really work on this first mutual trust before we start working together. Then the autonomy, and that's again, that governments should respect that the organizations who are consulted, they have their organizational independence and autonomy, so they can criticize the government policy. So they don't become the employees of the government just because they participate in this process. Then next one is sustainability, and here I mean funding, of course. That those people who are participating in this work should have some kind of funding. And then relevance, so that all participants should perceive this process as a relevant process, which means that it should not only be about listening to civil society, but really like using what civil society has to say when they are designing the decisions. And I will say how this can fail in reality. So this is the cycle, and this is the quality criteria we formulated in this document, the quality standards for civil society involvement, and this was published in 2022. So we wanted to use this document as a tool to assess the real situation. So we have now this is the ideal scenario. This is how it should look like, but what is the reality in the field, how the NGOs and how the government see these issues in terms of the exercises they have. And first, we did a questionnaire survey among the membership of the CSLD. So these are organizations working in the drug field, mostly service provider organizations from the 27 member states of the EU. And what we find out was that it's a mixed picture. So, for example, most of the civil society organizations who responded to the survey said that Yes, in our country, it is not so difficult to approach government officials, so we can write an email, we can call them. It's not so difficult. So that was like the strongest element. But the weakest link in the chain was the funding, so that more organizations said that yes, our work, advocacy work, is not funded, so we are doing that in our free time, and and the relevance was also a very weak subject, so that in most of the EU countries, people said that, yeah, we have some kind of effort to involve us, but we don't really feel that our voice is really meaningful, really relevant to the government. So that even if they listen to us, usually they don't really do what we ask from them. Let's say so, not in terms of funding and not in terms of legislative changes, for example. But this the survey results, I don't know how about you think about the survey results, but I think these don't tell the whole picture. Usually this scales. So we thought that we need something more. We need to look deeper into the situation. So we did a qualitative study as well, a focus group study. So we wanted to find out how government participants and civil society participants see this whole process. We've selected 4 countries in this research: Ireland, Hungary, Greece, and Finland. And this research was done by a grant from European Commission in the spring of 2023 by Correlation European Harm Reduction Network. And in the study, I traveled to Athens, to Dublin, and to Helsinki. And of course, I shouldn't travel for Budapest. And then we did 2 focus groups in each of these countries, one for decision makers and one for civil society representatives. And in the decision maker group, we invited people from relevant ministries, civil servants, research institutions, national drug focal points. In the civil society group, we invited professional service providers, advocacy organizations, community representatives, people who use drugs, relevant researchers. And of course, we did these 2 focus groups because we thought we suspected, that if we mix these 2 groups, then they will not be very honest to us, and they will not respond honestly to the questions. So we did it separately and also anonymously, so that they could really talk what is in their heart. And yeah, these are the questions we discussed. I will not go through all of the questions, but the questions were actually based on the 9 overarching quality standards. So we went through all the 9 quality standards, and we asked people what are their perceptions about the involvement of civil society. Is it transparent? Is it relevant? Is it sustainable? And so on. So I will speak shortly about the findings of this study. First of all, we asked the participants, and this report again is available on both on our website, Drug Reporter, both on Correlation's website. And the title, if you Google it, Critical Partners, Level and Quality of Civil Society Involvement in the Field of Drug Policy. So let's talk about the findings. So first of all, we asked people to map what kind of mechanisms exist in their country and in the local level to involve civil society. And here the optimal scenario would be to have a formal structure, a formal body, which has also decision-making power in drug policies, and civil society delegates can sit in these committees and vote and have the right to make some decisions. This kind of formal mechanism only existed in Ireland. For example, in Finland, there is no formal government mechanism at all. In Hungary, there was one in the past, but it is not operational anymore. And in Greece, there is only one advisory body where only one civil society representative is sitting, but it has no decision-making power. So the situation is far from optimal, even in Ireland, as I will tell you. So what was also interesting that most of the both government and civil society participants said that that the most relevant and meaningful dialogues do not happen through these formal channels, but through informal channels. So behind the doors, it is still working behind the doors. This is I prepared you a few like how the structure of drug policy coordination looks like in different countries. And in Finland, let's look at Finland first. In Finland, there is the Ministry of Social Affairs and Health, which coordinates which coordinates drug policy in the country. It has a National Drug Policy Coordination Group. This is an interministerial group, but there is no civil society representation there. There is a background institution for the government. Again, it has some connection to civil society, but officially there is no mechanism to involve civil society. But civil society itself created its own working group, and they invite, from time to time, they invite the government there. So it's like, with the Mohammed and the mountain issue. So if the government is not creating us a formal mechanism, then the civil society created its own mechanism and they invite the government there. But this is far from optimal. In Greece, the Ministry of Health is on the top of this structure, and it has the state agencies. In Greece, there is a very state-centric system. So most of the harm reduction services are also provided by big state agencies, Okana and KTA. NGOs are also providing some services, but they have much less resources. And actually, in Greece, again, there is a National Drug Policy Committee, but civil society is not a member of that. But there is a National Drug Coordinator, and he has an advisory board, and there is one civil society representative in that. So again, it's not very optimal. In Hungary, we had a civil society member sitting in a drug coordination committee, and I was one member before 2010, and we could vote there. So we had a voting rights. And the civil society organizations elected the representatives themselves. So it was a very progressive system before 2010, but then it changed. Now we don't have this system anymore. The government created a kind of advisory body, the Drug Council, but the Drug Council had no meetings after the COVID epidemic. So this is actually a non-operational system anymore. Only level where civil society is involved in Hungary now is the city level. Mostly in Budapest level, we have a local drug council, and the civil society is involved there. But in the national level, absolutely no dialogue at the moment between the government and civil society. In Ireland had the most advanced system among the 4 countries. So in Ireland, again, the Ministry of Health is on the top of the system. And they also have the National Health Agency, the HSE, and under the Ministry of Health, there is a so-called National Oversight Committee, which overseeing the implementation of the national drug strategy. And it has different working groups, and the working groups have the civil society representatives in it. And in theory, this committee can make decisions, so the people are voting and they adopt documents. It's another question how relevant they see this work, but we can speak about that later. And also there was a very interesting exercise in Ireland. Anna Kriegel, in last time at the advocacy workshop, she explained that if you were not there, I can tell you that this exercise was that 99 person was randomly selected from the general population. So they created an assembly from these citizens who had not whatsoever connection to drug policy before. And this citizens assembly was met periodically. They listened to the presentations from professionals and people with lived experience, and they came up with a recommendation to the government in the end. So this is a kind of very innovative tool to involve the general population into drug policy, I think. So we can learn a lot from it. There were fears that the citizens will adopt something conservative, but in the end, what they adopted is, for example, they supported decriminalization. So I think that's a quite interesting exercise. So this is about the structures. About the other overarching criteria, transparency. So in most of the focus groups, the civil society representatives from all countries said that they don't really see how the decisions are made. So what these mechanisms are doing is usually just presenting them what the government has already decided. So they don't really involve them into uh, uh, brainstorming of what decisions should be made or setting the agenda. But they are just presented what the government already decided, and they are asking them about that. And then there is also a lack of oversight of who and how is making the decisions. Usually the real decisions are made at the political level, and it's an often expressed concern from civil society that even if they are involved in drug policy making, they don't meet the real decision making level. They meet like lower level officials who are just implementing what the political level has decided. And when they try to reach the political level, they usually hit a wall, because if they send a letter to the minister will send a letter to the lower level official, and the lower level official will answer their letter. So I think it's a very common problem we experience in most countries. So that sometimes these mechanisms to involve society, they are not at the real decision making level. Then balance. Some organizations complain, that the selection of the organizations is often based on informal relationships with the civil society. So there are some more privileged voices and there are some less privileged voices in this dialogue. And of course, it can create lots of tensions within the civil society, like who is closer to the decision maker, who is maybe have more distance to the decision makers. So this means that some of our members of civil society feel excluded from the process. Timeliness. This was more or less most organizations said that they can get the documents in time, so they have sufficient time to work to make their positions. There was one exception of Hungary where it happened that we only had like 2 days to review and comment on documents. So that was a very short deadline, and this was almost impossible to make a position on that. Approachability, it's interesting that most civil society organizations agreed that the case stakeholders respond, but there were also differences in the city and the national level, and also it was said that there is some kind of selection. So some civil society have better connections to governments than others. So, for example, those community groups, especially the community groups like people who use drugs, communities, they often feel that their letters, emails are not answered at all, and it is for them it's much more difficult to contact the government. In terms of competence, it was interesting to see that most of the decision makers had a very high opinion of us as civil society. So the government officials said that yes, it is very beneficial for us to talk to civil society because they are the real experts. They know what's happening on the ground. So So they were very happy with our knowledge on drug policy, but they were not happy with our knowledge of decision-making processes. So it was a criticism often repeated by government officials that civil society have no idea how this process works. So they are having some ambitious aims, and they don't really see how can it be fit into the decision-making mechanisms and processes. So I think that's something we have to also hear this criticism, and it's an important feedback. Also, that there was the problem of that government officials often rotate, so that new officials are coming, and the civil society can invest a lot of time and energy into educating one official, but then the next is coming, and then the person is just as ignorant about drug policy as the previous one. Then openness, trust. It was obvious that what could really break the trust between government and civil society was that some decision makers see that when civil society is criticizing the government, it sees that the civil society is entering a political field, and they are not happy with that. So they think that if a civil society organization makes a press statement and it criticizes a new drug strategy or policy, that is a kind of breaching of the trust. And this, on the other hand, the civil society representatives feel that this label, that you are labeled as political, it is just used to silence the critical voices. So this was a very, here there is a very serious disagreement between government and civil society, also about autonomy, so that we see the role of civil society differently. And to me, it was very interesting that many of the government officials, even though I wouldn't say they are hostile, but they are quite ignorant about civil society. So I think it would be great to have also trainings for them about what is the role of civil society, what kind of organizations there are, what is the mission of civil society organizations, all these things. And many of these decision makers, they still have this outdated idea, that policy making is the business of a privileged political class, which is elected. So you are not elected, so don't tell me anything about drug policies because you have no voice here. And I think this is important also to change this perception that that freedom of assembly is a very integral part of democracy, and civil society has a role in drug policy making. So this is pretty important, and also that the government should respect that civil society has a right to have a different opinion on subjects than the government. Many. It was also voiced that if you are criticizing the government, unfortunately, you can lose your funding. So that's again something which makes it difficult. And then we come to the next question. Here we come to the next question: sustainability. And governments still see that we should be grateful that we are involved in government consultation, but often this is really significant work from civil society. So this is really I mean, many working hours, lots of energy. So that means that it should be funded, but most organizations, harm reduction organizations, are service providers, and usually advocacy is the activity where you can find the least funding. So it's like many organizations just do it on top of what they are already doing. So it's a big problem, and it means that civil society representation itself is not balanced, because the community voices, those informal groups who have no funding, they have just no capacity to participate. So that's why it's that sometimes you can have a feeling, I've been to many countries and also at the European level, that usually you see the same faces, usually the same people. They have the capacity to participate. That doesn't mean that you have everybody on the table at the table. So So I think this is also a very interesting very important shortcoming. And the relevance, it was interesting to me. I expected, that, for example, organizations in advanced Western countries like Ireland or Nordic countries like Finland, NGOs will be more happy with the situation they have. But it was in that there was one common theme among the civil society, and that was unhappiness and unsatisfactoriness of the situation. So organizations were very unhappy with the situation, equally in Greece and in Finland, in Ireland. So that they expressed their frustration that they are really unable to make meaningful impact on decision making. And even if they have a platform to present their views, those views are often received with hostility or disinterest. And it's a question was raised that what is the role of civil society involvement? Is it just assisting in communicating or implementing pre-decided policies, or is it having a say in allocation of resources and setting the policy making agenda? Because we know that some people used to say that the budget is the skeleton of the state. Everything else is just empty talk. And if the organizations are not really involved in making allocation of budgets, then probably that's not much. They are not involved in much in the policy decision making. It was also interesting. Finally, I just want to highlight it that in all of the assessed countries, all these 4 countries, you see that there is some kind of shrinking space for civil society. So that means that there are some negative trends in how meaningfully civil society voices can be heard in general in the society level. So there is no media space enough, or funding space. There is reduced funding for civil society. There is less political space to express your ideas. And also in some countries, for example, Hungary or in Greece, there were also some legal troubles for organizations that were critical to government positions. So this is really now a trend in Europe, we can say. I mean, we see different kinds of crackdown on organizations in Hungary than in Western Europe. So in Hungary, for example, there is a government-sponsored scapegoating campaign in the media against civil society. Maybe that's not so harsh in Western Europe, but there is shrinking space in all of Europe, which is quite worrying trend. And also at the European Union level, we cannot be very satisfied with the situation. For example, with the European Union drug strategy is a good example of this. You know that in 2020, the European Commission created a new kind of document, a new drug strategy, which was actually merging drug policy with child sexual abuse and fighting illegal firearms. So they wanted to put drug policy into this framework of crime persecution, anti-crime fighting. And this document was not done with consultation of civil society. So civil society was mostly left out from the process. And when we were listened, we criticized this very harshly. So this was adopted against civil society, that we can say. And then, finally, because of civil society criticism, the European Council cancelled this drug strategy, and now we have a new drug strategy which was adopted by the European Council, or prepared by the European Presidency and the Council, and that was much more progressive. But I just told you this example because even in the European Union level, sometimes civil society is not very much involved in decision-making processes. And if you look at I don't want to go to politics, but just if you allow me one remark about the European parliamentary elections, if you look at the results, probably it won't be very favorable to us, civil society, in the European level. Not in most of countries, not favorable in the national level and not favorable in the European Union level. So brace for impact. So this was my presentation. Thank you so much for listening. I'll stop sharing my screen. And I would like to ask you if you have any questions or comments. I know that some of you also can share with us some examples from your countries. But before you share your own examples, do you have any questions or comments about what I was talking about? Anyone? Any questions or comments? You can raise your hand. I think there is this. Yeah, Philip.
Hello, Peter and everyone, and thank you very much for the presentation, which is super interesting. And thank you so much for making this report and laying down what civil society can mean. I have one practical question. Do you have some practical advice what to say when decision makers or stakeholders say, I would not know who to invite? Because it requires for example, we can only invite NGO members that have been elected within their civil society organizations. This may be okay, so we can have some people from these formal organizations, but it wouldn't be possible for them to invite people who aren't organized formally, or maybe require some anonymity. So what is your advice, and what how can it practically work to have these decision makers really invite everyone who has something to say?
That's a very good question. Thank you for asking. And in our reports, the quality standards, we also have a special part on because we thought it's very important, to involve community voices. And what you are saying, that sometimes community organizations are not formally registered organizations, and sometimes community activists who are very important voices, they are not invited in the process because they don't represent a formal NGO. I think, my recommendation would be, to sensitize the decision maker about this issue. That now it's like you can't really do any kind of civil society involvement exercise without involving the people who are the most affected. That is the people who use drugs, and that with community organizations and activists, it is not so simple issue as with registered civil society organizations. So they need to have a special status, or they need to have some special slots in this process to be able to be able to participate. And maybe also we civil society can provide them some support. Those organizations who have some administrative backgrounds and those capacities, we can also support these community activists to participate. And we are also lucky to have one community voice here, Christos from Greece. Yeah. And I see that Christos wants to say something about this.
Yeah, I want to say that the civil society and drug user networks partnership, it will be only for the good. It can enhance the credibility and the legitimacy for the advocacy efforts. It's more ethical to partnership with the people that are in the streets and first those voices. And they are most affected for the drug policies and all this. And I'm totally convinced about that now the movement of drug users network is very in a good position, and we have to enhance our partnership with the civil society. And I think inside in Vienna must be more voices of the community because it's more ethical and for the best.
Thank you,
That's it.
Christos. Thank you. It's very important.
Thank you.
Okay, Feline, I don't know if we answered your question or.
Yeah, I had these conversations, and maybe it really requires more endurance in educating them to really understand that they miss out. So I told them in the past, you miss out, and you won't get the full picture if you don't ask anything. And but then they shut down a bit and were didn't take. I invited them. Hey, ask me. I've got a network of so many people who can contribute from various backgrounds, from various experiences, and so on. But they never came back to me to use this connection and resource. So it's
and you are speaking about Austria,
Germany.
Germany. Okay, as a city or national?
We are acting nationwide, so we're a nationwide network. I'm based in Berlin, so I'm also close to the government.
Okay.
Yeah, but it seems like it's really difficult to make them understand what civil society involvement really takes.
Yeah, I mean, probably that's common in our countries, because our country was following the German way of administration and this attitude. So I understand that it's sometimes very difficult to explain them. So that's why we created this document. So if you can check that, I mean, you can also use it. I don't know if they will. I don't say they will, just accept it, but maybe you can use it as a reference point. That this is at the European level.
Yeah.
We have this recommendation how civil society should be invited, so please use it, and you can maybe it will be useful in your communications.
Are you planning translations, or is there already a translation?
So that's a good question. We have not planned it, but if there is a need from civil society, of course, I think correlation can be. In correlations correlations director is German, so I think she can be open to a German translation if you would like to talk to them.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Anybody else had some comments on any other issues of the presentation? If not, then we also have some local voices here who could explain us about the situation of civil society involvement in their own countries. So we have, for example, Nicoletta from Romania. Nicoletta, would you like to speak a bit about how is civil society involvement in terms of harm reduction in Romania?
Well, that's good that you say to speak a little, because I can talk all day long about this. Well, the situation, let's start with the negative part. We have seen in the last 2 years a lot of changes in the legislation, increases in the penalties for drug possession, of course. And now it's like I don't know if there is a term for this, it's like an over-legalization. So we have so many changes to the law connected to the drug possession that nobody knows exactly what the penalties are. We all know that they have increased, but there are so many, and there have been so many changes that it's now I think it's even impossible to apply these laws, And even now, as we speak, there is another proposal in the parliament to increase again the penalties for drug possession, and without any. And let's say the negative part is that there has been no consultation of the civil society for this. So these are proposals from people in the parliament, so senators or deputies. And there is no mechanism to consult civil society. And they haven't done it, of course. So we are, let's say, in a kind of crisis related to this. We took advantage of the fact that we had this Sunday, we had both the elections for the European Parliament and also the local elections in Romania for the mayors and the city councils everywhere. And we sent for all the candidates for the European Parliament, we sent a document created by the European platform of Coalition Plus, talking about decriminalization and so on, you know, the harm reduction and all the measures. And we got some answers saying that, yeah, your initiative is very good and we will support it, but if you don't talk about legalization, because that's, but we got some answers. I mean, we have a few persons. Let's see if they will be on the final list of the elected people. And then, so this is the negative part. This is the situation in Romania. And then let's say a good example is the fact that Romania has received a lot of money from the European Commission through the mechanism of structural funds, which puts a kind of pressure on public institutions in Romania to consult civil society. There are some mechanisms like public consultation for the funding guidelines. They are put on the website and you have 15 days or 30 days to read the document and then to send your opinion as an NGO. We can also ask sometimes for public open consultation, which does not mean that they always take into consideration our comments. But still, there is a mechanism. It's like an external pressure from the European Commission. And let's say some positive experiences is 2 examples. About 10 years ago, when our first project funded on structural funds and dedicated to intravenous drug users in Bucharest and around the capital, when it ended and we really didn't have any more money for this, what we did, we organized public manifestation in the city center. We invited other NGOs. We invited the media. We also invited drug users who were in our services. And that was quite a big scandal. I think it was the first time when we did this. And it worked because the project that we had submitted to the City Hall of Bucharest a year before, and they had never ever looked over it. In about 2 or 3 days after our manifestation in the city center, the City Hall called us and said, okay, come and let's talk about your project to see what we can do. And this was the first time when we got some public money for harm reduction. It's not the same situation with the Ministry of Health. They always say that it's not their issue. Drug issues are not related to the Ministry of Health, but they belong to the National Anti-Drug Agency. We have a National Anti-Drug Agency which belongs to the Ministry of Internal Affairs. So in fact, it's the police. It's a little, but still, this year is the second year where they fund harm reduction through public bid. So we sent the project and we got the money, and it's the second year when this happens. We will see next with the elections. And then another example, which had a big impact, but only in terms of advocacy, and the media wrote about it, is 2 years ago when in June for the Support Don't Punish Day, we asked the people in our harm reduction services, or in methadone or in needle exchange, to send letters to the Ministry of Health and to require services. And we had around 700 letters, individual letters with the name of the persons. And I remember that I went to the Ministry of Health every 2 or 3 days with some letters again, and we registered them. And so they were like flooded with the letters from the, they didn't do anything. The ministry didn't do anything after all this, but we know that they, I don't know. They got the real situation in the field. I mean, not letters from NGOs, but letters from real people in the field who wrote and required their right. In fact, it's the right to health and to health services. This is like just very briefly, let's say, about what we have been doing.
Thank you very much. It's very, very useful to hear, and congratulations to the funding, because I know, I mean, I have been following Romania for a long time, and it was like, we sometimes thought that it's like impenetrable wall against harm reduction funding in that country. So I think it's a big news. And
it is, but
good.
it's always a love and hate relation. It's like, you know, well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's interesting, and maybe now, if there is some dialogue with some of these people, maybe you can initiate that there should be a permanent mechanism to involve civil society, at least to be a to create a platform where you can regularly speak.
Yeah, we hope
it would be
that.
useful. Thank you so much, Nicoletta. Who wants to go first? Next? Anyone? Ala, maybe?
Yes. Hello. And thank you for this opportunity and for your interesting presentation, Peter. I will speak. I will try to present you the Moldovan experience. And
for those of participants who don't know you, can you please introduce yourself? Talk a bit about.
Yes. I'm representing the Union for Equity and Health. It's ex-harm reduction network in Moldova. We renamed the organization 2 years ago, and we are an organization involved in advocacy, but also in service providing. And we are in touch and coordinating other organizations providing harm reduction services in Moldova. About our today topic, to be vocal and to have the power to influence the situation and the policy, it's supposed to have access to decision-making platforms for us as civil society organization. And following that, here in Moldova, we as CSO, and we are around 10 organizations working in the field of harm reduction here. We managed to become part of a few important platforms from our part of view. It is the HIV/AIDS and TB country coordination mechanism. It's a national drug commission, and I think each country has such kind of bodies, entities. It is the Parliamentary Commission for Health and Social Protection. And we have another very useful tool for us. We consider it as the Key Affected Population Committee. It's a non-formal platform. We joined all of us, civil society and community representative. And
is it connected or related to the Global Fund?
Yes, now it is funded from the Global Fund grant for CCM Secretariat. And because of that, it is considered by the governmental entities, especially by the Ministry of Health, as a main platform to consult civil society and communities in this field. So it's very easy under the umbrella of this committee to access the Ministry of Health, but not just the Ministry of Health. I want to use and share with you some pictures that will help me to share my experience, our experience related to civil society and community involvement in development and coordination, implementation of harm reduction standards and services. And I think it is possible, yes. Share, do you see?
Yes.
So this is our common action organized a lot of years ago. It's about 7 years ago. And during this action, we advocated towards Ministry of Health and towards drug hospital to ensure the accessibility to naloxone within harm reduction services. And after this coordinated action, we managed to achieve this. We elaborated together with the drug hospital the regulations necessary for availability of naloxone within harm reduction projects. And until now, we have this medication within our services. Both civil society organization and community representative were part of this action. The same joint efforts we use to speak with the Ministry of Health about the importance of hepatitis C treatment for people using drugs. We organized like kind of I don't know how to say in English, kind of picket, a social action in the front of the Ministry of Health. And after that, when they changed the standards, the criteria for involvement in treatment were revised, offering the access also for people using drugs. A lot of actions and a lot of activities we were organized towards ensuring harm reduction sustainability in the Republic of Moldova, including financial sustainability. And you know, we manage today to have about half of services financed by national insurance companies. And after this kind of activities, advocacy activities, coordinated civil society and community action, usually we were organized in working groups in order to elaborate all the necessary documentation, like standards. And we have now in Moldova standards for HIV prevention and harm reduction services. We have standards for psychosocial support for people using drugs. Of course, these standards should be revised and should be improved during the time. And now we are in the process of revision, but we, because of the access we have through all platforms to making decision bodies, we managed to do this. So it's another other action targeting harm reduction sustainability. This one was in the front of Ministry of Finance in the Republic of Moldova. Here we have people from communities involved also, and also we involved part of specialists, of professionals, like doctors from drug hospital, from infection disease hospital. They were together with us during this kind of action, and we were speaking together about the challenges. And of course, humanization of the drug legislation and the importance of the alternative to incarceration implementation. It's a important subject for Moldova. And here we had another action of efforts organized together with our partners from civil society organization, but also with communities. And after that, it was in 2022, in 2023, we achieved to have a revision of the penal code. Of course, it was not done in a perfect manner, but some of the articles were changed. And we were happy with that at that moment. Now we are working towards other important issue. And if to link with your presentation, Peter, here in Moldova, many times we are informed by the authorities. We participate in the processes, in public consultation. We participate in elaboration of the regulation, standards, instructions, many of times, and they look at us at the partners. But now, you know, being in the process of preparation to European Union integration, we remarks that the authorities are very hasty in adjusting and drafting their documentation, the legislation. So now they start to leave us out of these processes. It's a very fresh, very new trend, and we became aware of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a very, very good practice of advocacy, and yeah, it's very good to see that you did this powerful protest. Can we say it is a protest? Because you were also
yes,
saying
sometimes
that
sometimes we call them
English
protests, but you know, we used to be very correct, and yes, we are speaking about human rights, about humanity in the services, in policies. And at the same time, we are trying to respect the dignity of the persons concerned, and because we understood that it's because of policies and it's because of systems. And when we will manage to work together with people from there, we will manage to change the situation. And yes, we call them protests, but we try to open the dialogue, not just to speak about the challenges and to ask them to change. We are ready to be part of this process, and we provide also some recommendation and some solution for this.
Yeah, thank you so much. And again, I mean, it would be also great. I don't know if you have any permanent mechanism to involve society and drug policy, or is it just ad hoc when they want, they invite you, or is it like a regular forum to invite
No,
you?
it is a regulation, and we have
Okay.
the regulation for National Drug Commission, and it is fixed that part of the members of the commission must be civil society representatives. And there is an official list of members, and we are in this list of members.
Cool. That's very good. So congratulations to the work you've done, Ala. Thank you. Is there any question to Ala?
Just a comment.
Yeah, Nicoletta.
Yeah, just to say that we from Romania, we have been looking up to what is going on in Moldova. And we always say, look, they have good legislation, look what they're doing. And they are like an example for us. And we know, as Ala said, that it's part of the process of entering the European Union. And with fingers crossed that they keep it afterwards.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to share a story from their
Peter, I have
countries?
to go to the
Yeah.
pharmacy. Goodbye to all.
Bye,
It
bye,
was very
Christos.
nice.
Thank you for
Bye-bye.
coming. Bye. So, is there anyone else who would like to share a story about the country? Dominica, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear
Would you
me?
like? Yes.
Yeah. I can share. Maybe I will share just a part of the civil society involvement in Slovakia and some kind of good example of the civil society involvement at the local level and at the level with the city of Bratislava. When I was listening your presentation, I took pictures of the levels of involvement, and I was trying to find where are we. So when we are looking at it from the point of these 4 levels of civil society involvement, so on the city level of Bratislava, so I think that we are between dialogue and partnership. And as example, Bratislava as a city, in previous years, they were planning like community planning of social services for the whole Bratislava. There were like 3 basic groups, youth and families at risk, seniors, and then people experiencing homelessness, drug users, sex workers, like vulnerable, marginalized communities. There were working groups, the directing working group, they even had like members from the community, and they were accepting the proposals, the plannings. We had some clients there, people experiencing homelessness as well, and also one sex worker. So they were in the directing group, and every group was divided, depends on the target groups. So the chapter about people experiencing homelessness, so we were creating some community plan. The plan is prepared until 2030. The whole process was really formal. We had even like external facilitator organizations. The meetings were, the process took around 1 year, 1.5 years. I think that the input for civil societies was valid, and the city of Bratislava really considered it. And the final document is, I think, good result of the cooperation with multiple stakeholders. But there is always a but. Now the problem is that we should implement this community plan, and the problem is with the implementation. So this is the reason why I would not say that it's like complete partnership, because the implementing decision now is the problematic part. They already have everything written. The plan is like, there is general consensus between civil society, city of Bratislava, other stakeholders that this needs to happen. But because of the war in Ukraine, or some budget cuts, or some decisions of the government, they are taking budgets from the cities, there is like lack of funding for implementing this community plan. So all the activities and all the actions are moving from year to year. So yeah, we have 6 more years. This community plan is already 3 years. And some important tasks were still not happened, because, for example, the department of the drug strategy or the drug policy, like for 2 years in a row, they had like €0 budget for implementing their chapters from the community plan. So they can do just some meetings or some analysis, but not actually service implementations or creating new services, which are mentioned. So this is, I think that people from the city of Bratislava, they feel that is important, but they really they have problems with the public and the perception of the public, how to communicate it to the public, and in in 2 years there are new elections, so for them it's already like lost time, that it's just too short to implement something new because elections are in 2 years. So we need to wait even more, which is for me unacceptable. And I think that they lack gut to do it. They even say that what they need at the city level or the level of social section of the city of Bratislava, I'm now quoting the head of the harm reduction department, and she said that they need people with guts to do drug policy in the city, but they should have the guts, because I think they are there to do the drug policy in the city. So this is my point.
Thank you so much, Dominika. Which is very similar to our experience in Budapest, where we have a very progressive drug strategy at the city level, but implementation is another issue because there is no real budget for the city of Budapest. So we have a very small grant for harm reduction organizations, but it's really very little money. And we have nice ambitions in the strategy, but how it will be implemented, yeah, it's really like political commitment and but a question of budget. So yeah, I can relate to your situation. Thank you so much. I think our time is more or less up. Is there anyone who wants to, Philin, you would like to share something?
Yeah, I can offer to share a little bit shortly what we did recently to open up the discussion with the political parties in Germany about participation. That is, previous to the European election, we sent 8 questions to the political parties who run for parliament, and we asked them about their political agenda. The first good news is all of them gave us answers. They answered to us. We are a network, an informal network of people who have been advocating for some years now for legalization and decriminalization openly. So we got answers also from the conservatives, which was great, but also we included a question which was about participation and specifically asked about their willingness to provide funding or to argue for funding to make participation really possible and to involve people in all steps of the decision-making process. And it revealed to us that there is little knowledge about civil society involvement or little understanding how much is indeed necessary. So we have these answers written down, and we plan on understanding this as an opener for this future discussion. And we will approach the parties again and tell them, now that you are in the European Parliament, you gave us this answer about participation, and we want to talk more about that. We think we should tell you more. So this is now an opener that we could create, and I'm sending to you the link. It is in German, but translation programs have worked well in the past. So I hope it is also useful for you.
Dankeschön. And actually, I wanted to ask you that, you know, everybody's watching what's happening in Germany now with cannabis legalization, and I was wondering if this in the preparation of this cannabis legalization, how much civil society was involved. I mean, were there any structured dialogue, you know, before the new law was elaborated by the government?
Yeah, so in your 4-way steps, I think it could be attributed to step 2. The government thought it was very much involving the cannabis users or people experienced with criminalization, because they were much more progressive than the previous government, because they considered there are people who have an opinion and have experience that are valuable. But what they did is that they just spread the information. Hey, we are open for your comments. Tell us what you think about the draft. And this was all. So they didn't invest in any structures. They didn't invest in involvement in every step. They didn't invest in communication about transparency. It was not very, for outsiders or people who are not experienced with politics, it was not possible to understand where the decisions will be made or what it means to take the time to formulate a response to the draft. And also, there were some successes made by, for example, you know, maybe know Handverband in Germany, probably, who have organized in the past as a strong voice for cannabis users. They were involved. And for example, I think it's a win that the growing at home is allowed. This was due to civil society demands and that it was listened to them. So it could have been worse, but we also criticized in person for example, the drug commissioner or others, and explained to them that this is far away from what civil society could look like and can, and you didn't involve every group of people who have experience with criminalization. You just opened a call and that's it. So there's so much more, and yeah, but we had difficulties to explain to them, and that it really must include proactive action to really reach all people, and also those who may not have the time during the day to write down their comments about the draft or read it, or so. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing the story from Germany. And as I see, there is one question in the chat from Andres. Andres, do you want to ask it in words, or should I just read it? Yeah, it says, what should be the role in high-level decision-making scenarios, marginalized, unregistered civil society? If I understand the question correctly, I think like how can be very similar to what Philin asked about, how can we involve those voices that are not part of registered organization. I think, you know, like you can also understand somehow the government's position, that they want to have some kind of credible information about the people who are involved. So I mean, even if the community group is not registered, or the activist, I think it should have some kind of track record, you know, at least what the government can check, that is it really a relevant voice I want to invite. I think you can find several very good practices, like some drug policy activists from Europe who are not registered but still have a very good track record. So I think we can also do something to increase our, let's say, visibility for the government and track record. Milutin, you would like to say something?
Yes, I mean, it was a very nice event, and I thank you, Peter, for this and involvement of everyone else. I just wanted to add something for future considerations, because I didn't want to interrupt. Thing which I want to say is that in Macedonia, the whole process of designing the national drug strategy and action plan was run by civil society, and I think it's a very good example. Now they are in the process of evaluating the first action plan and creating a new one for the second part of the strategy. Unfortunately, civil society is not in a position to follow or to actually organize implementation of the strategy, which is actually when the governmental structures are not good in implementing what was decided. I think the good example of a civil society running the whole process and actually standing behind the strategy is a very good example for the future. And the second point, which I wanted to say, I think that in countries, actually, especially here in Southeast Europe, where we still have some support from the Global Fund, which means a lot of good investment into prevention projects for people for preventing HIV and other connected diseases. There is a group of organizations which are primary recipients or have been primary recipients, and they actually are managing quite high level of funds. And I think that's also very interesting to observe the way they are prepared, not in a sense of controlling them, but in the sense of how civil society is developing in the position when they have quite significant amount to manage. Normally, much more are small organizations which are fighting, or medium-sized organizations which are fighting for sustainability. But there are organizations which grow up very big. And actually, when you describe the first couple of slides, between the connection between the sectors, I think that some of them have turned not only in the area of HIV prevention, they turned into more kind of business type organizations, which is necessary if you want to implement big budgets, and that's kind of turning from only originally civil society structure into something which is a kind of a mixture. I think it will be interesting to make a kind of analysis of this thing, and maybe get some lessons for future work. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Halalepo. It's a very important point, I think. And indeed, sometimes, we speak about civil society, but we don't even know what civil society has evolved into these years, and what kind of new types of organizations and structures we mean by civil society. For example, last week I was at the psychedelic conference in the Netherlands, and I learned that MAPS, which is the greatest American organizations to promote psychedelic therapy, it also created its own like business enterprise, which was promoting MDMA treatment. So it's like, as I said in the beginning, sometimes these lines between the civil society and markets can be blurring. So it's a good.
Also, I think that there is also one issue which is quite specific. It's that civil society organizations are seen as a kind of unison block, I would call it. And there are so many different variations of how we are organized. You can find the civil society think tank, civil society service organization, civil society network organization, civil society activist organizations. There are separate modalities, but we all treat the whole sector as kind of civil society organization, and that creates a lot of difference, and also kind of you cannot approach everything in the same model. I think that's also a very important point.
Yes, indeed, and we could also meet some kind of lack of understanding when we worked with the Civil Society Forum on Drugs. I remember that when we met with the Horizontal Working Party on Drugs, the governments, and some of them asked, like, where are the professors, where are the academics? So they had a different kind of perception that if we are an expert group of the Commission, so we probably have, the kind of academic people, and we in the civil society, of course, we have academic researchers, but sometimes it's, again, academic researchers have different hats. They work at the universities, they work at civil society organizations, and I think civil society has very many kinds of expertise, and that's why it's so important what we do. So wrapping up our conversation, because we are now our time is now up. Thank you so much for participating in this webinar on civil society involvement. I think one of the lessons learned was that there is some kind of involvement of civil society in most European countries, but our mission is that how we can make this involvement more permanent, more meaningful, and more sustainable. And I think this document I presented to you can be used in local and national advocacy when you are talking to your governments to create those mechanisms that can really ensure that your voices are heard, and there is a diversity of voices that are heard. So thank you so much for being here, And please come to the next webinar, which will be on the 18th of June on disinformation and moral panics. Thank you and bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.